And I'm delighted to be here this morning. As much to learn from you as anything else. And this morning's event is a real example of the collision of technology with what has been a very traditional sector. And it's probably no different to many of the other sectors that we're experiencing. Yours is a unique opportunity, giving the potential for growth and development. And what I wanted to do this morning was give you a little bit of information about the NSAI, talk to you in terms of the linkages as I see it, particularly between standards and BIM, and I know Kieran has alluded to some of that this morning, so it's really to expand upon that, and then to broaden the landscape, take you to Europe, give you an indication of what's happening at a very, very high level, and then finally reflect back what's happening in Ireland, and close out with what our plans are under the roadmap. So to start off, the NSAI are a government body. We're a statutory agency of the Department of Business, Enterprise and Innovation, and we have a number of roles. And so primarily our roles all revolve around standards. We're the authority charged with developing standards, and equally we're charged with certifying those same standards, providing you and other interested stakeholders with information on the benefits of standards, the use of standards, and indeed technical information that might support the decisions that you make in and around about the use of those same standards. So our world is one of ensuring that we have balanced stakeholder representation, that we take the views of everybody in this room, that we are able then in that environment to reach a consensus on what the Irish national position should be on a wide variety of different matters. So oftentimes our discussions are quite technical, they're quite specific, but that's not to undermine the huge importance of those areas for us going forward. Equally, the formats that we employ and deploy allow and ensure that everybody in this room has a chance to make a difference and to comment on our work, and also to be advised simultaneously of what's happening at European level. We're very fortunate that Ralph Montague here is chairing the Irish BIM committee, and I'll come back to that at a later stage, but just to say that there is very real and active connections between this room and the work of the NSAI and standards. And if I look to the roadmap, and specifically in terms of how the roadmap calls out standards and what has been described. So the roadmap very significantly describes BIM, the relationship between BIM and standards, as a common agreement between all the built environment stakeholders and how to describe the elements of buildings or infrastructure from the macro down to individual building products. So the standards work that we're dealing with will deal with everything from the macro to the micro, and that's where the challenges for us are. How do we keep engaged at all levels of this process, and how do we ensure that what happens at a micro level is translated up to the big macro projects that Kieran displayed just a couple of moments ago. But it's hugely important that we do that, because if we don't, we won't have the interoperability as between different systems. And we can do all of this work, but it creates duplication if at the end of the day we can't transfer the knowledge from one system to another. And I know many in this room are already engaged in various aspects of BIM. So for us, looking to the future of where Ireland can play a role, the key to this is ensuring long-term certainty, such that the investments that you're making today will have a longevity of life into the future, so that you can be sure that what you're doing today will translate repeatedly, time and time again, going forward. Equally, I'm looking beyond this room, and I'm looking to the future users of the various built assets that you are creating. And we need to ensure that those folk are also engaged and know and appreciate the potential that the systems that you're developing can provide to them. They need to know how they can use their software to manipulate what you've done to their best advantage to maximise efficiency. And I'm looking at the longevity of the projects and the work that's being done here and around BIM, supporting projects during the entire life cycle of various built assets. And I suppose the bottom line there is this work future-proofs what we're all at today. And this is why BIM standards are so important for us all going forward. And much has been said about BIM standards, but what actually do BIM standards cover? And I'm not going to go into the detail of the standards, and I'm sure people in this room are far more expert on the detail of the technologies. But on the broadest sense, BIM standards cover production, management, and exchange of architectural, engineering, construction, and operational information regarding the built environment. So effectively, BIM standards cover every aspect and any aspect that you might consider of the work that you're doing. And they need to do that, because in order for us to be sure that we have certainty into the future, that the BIM scope for standards needs to be as broad as possible. So I see BIM being relevant to planning, design, construction, but crucially also to the subsequent operation of every asset, such that we have, as I mentioned, this reliable basis for decision making. And there is no doubt about it that the standards developers see that the solution to the management of information being critical as its reliance on BIM. And not alone that, but then go back to what I said, BIM relies on the application of common standards, such that we can ensure that exchange of information throughout different projects, throughout different stakeholders, and different users, and different external users who might never be involved with the design and construction of the built asset. So that then is where I see the connection between BIM and standards. Looking then to, well, where actually do standards come from? And just to take it back for just a minute and give you an idea of how we manage and where we fit into the picture. So we're the National Standards Authority of Ireland. So that gives us three roles. So in terms of standards development. So firstly, we develop standards nationally. We develop standards with our colleagues in Europe, and we also develop standards at international level. So CEN and CENELEC, they're the European fora, and ISO and IEC, the international fora. And we act as a conduit by bringing together national experts, getting their views, and then once we have those views, either transferring those views ourselves or indeed affording national delegates the opportunity to come forward and represent Ireland at various international committees. So all these standards, as I mentioned, they're drafted from consensus. Typically, standards are not mandatory, although on occasion standards have been included in legislation. But really, where standards come to the fore is when there's a commercial advantage, such as in the BIM environment, that consensus agreed documents give competitive advantage going forward. So that's the key work we're achieving. We're striving to achieve as a state body. We're striving to achieve consensus to reflect Irish national perspectives, to bring that forward at European and international level, and equally then to reflect back what is happening at international level or at European level, so that we are acting as that conduit for you, such that you're aware of what is going on. And I suppose for me, one of the key criteria concerned at this point in time is that some of the standards work, it's not the most exciting. I can't show flashy videos of the work that we're doing, but that's not to undermine the importance of the work. And one of my fears would be that because at the moment the work is quite technically focused in terms of IT, that the standards that will be set for this sector will be set by IT specialists rather than professionals such as yourselves. And I think we need to be very mindful of that, and we need to work collectively to ensure that we get through the Mirror Committee, through Ralph, that we get that exchange of information, and that you're all aware of what's happening in the various committees. And I suppose looking specifically at standards in Europe, there's a key working group in Europe, and it's the CEN-TC 442 committee. It was established in April of 2015. It's chaired by Norway, and it has quite a significant following and interest. So we have strong input from the Nordics, so from Norway, Finland, France, Austria, Spain, UK, Germany, Denmark, Portugal, Slovenia, Italy, and ourselves, Ireland, are in attendance. And we expect this committee to grow as the importance of BIM evolves over the course of the coming years. And the scope and purpose of this group is very much to develop structured standards, specifications, reports that will specify methodology. So again, this work is going to be slower than some of the buildings that you're creating, but at the end of the day, the output of that will be to describe data exchanges, data monitoring and records, and indeed data security, to securely manage what you're doing. I thought it might be useful just to give you a high-level overview of the various activities at the moment. So currently there's this overarching committee that then has 5 working groups underneath it. So the 4 main work strands within that: there's a work strand on terminology, there's a work strand on the exchange of information, equally one on delivery specifications, and finally a working group on data dictionaries. Then there's a 5th working group that's looking at, is doing horizon scanning, watching what's happening internationally on BIM development, and is looking to develop the development of a European BIM strategy. So that group works more as an advisory group to the main working group established in 2015, and then feeds into each of these as well. So these are the levels of activity that's happening at a European level. And I appreciate it's far away from your worlds, but it is creating, as you can see, it's creating the fundamentals of a new language, which will be crucially important. So then to give you a sense of the breadth and spread of this work, I thought it would be useful just to give you a flavour of the organisations that are linking in and liaising with the European Committee. And I don't propose to go down through each of these, but I imagine these are more familiar names to yourselves than indeed they are to me. And again, it's giving you an indication of the reach of European stakeholders that are feeding in at European level into the work of this committee. So equally, I would like to see that we can reflect that type of diversity in the work of our own Mirror Committee, such that we're bringing as many views as possible to bear on the work of Ralph and colleagues. Because if we don't reflect at this point in time the complexity of and diversity of our views, it will be formed by others, most particularly the others here on the screen. The European context is also useful in that it creates a forum for the committee that's dealing with BIM standards to liaise with all these other groups. So you can see here where the committee already sees potential interaction. So this is not just a singular, isolated development. So there's interaction with facilities management, with energy performance, with acoustics. And this is probably just the start. I imagine if I was back here in 6 months that this list will go even longer. And interestingly, the interactions of the committee are not just at European level. Equally, there are interactions at ISO level, so that's on a global basis. So the committee is engaging with archives, record management, geographic information, and so forth. So there's connection with the committee at European level with broad stakeholders, and then there's also connections, there's lateral connections within the standards making world itself. So the key challenge actually will be to corral all of this information and make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel, but equally that if there's a body of knowledge elsewhere within the standards community, and I mentioned earlier just to some colleagues, blockchain for instance, there's real potential to translate some of the findings from blockchain into BIM, but there's no point in reinventing that whole piece of work. Rather, let's take the output from that and translate it into here. So this is where this becomes much more exciting, where you see the challenges and opportunities opening up from other work that has been done. I thought it was useful just to call out the work that has already been done, because while standards work is slow and detailed, there is no doubt about it, but that there has been an amount of work done to date. And typically, you'll see from this list, again, I don't propose to go down through it, but the type of work that has been achieved so far revolves around the development of dictionaries, conceptual data schemes, trying to grapple with and understand coordinating acts and what links various activities together, and indeed what talks about how do we talk about the various business processes that are undertaken. So not just the technical data terms, but scaling up as well to business processes. So yes, it's going back to first principles, but you can see it's building layers. It's building layers forward in what will be a very secure infrastructure for the future. So that's the work at European level. You will see that there's ISO references within those standards, and that's because there's quite significant cooperation between Europe and international standards development. Very much led because both the chair and the secretariat of both groups is actually held by Norway. So there are advantages in just back to the human in having singularity of representation. So this commonality is hugely important, because again it's going to avoid that duplication. And the joint partnership between Europe and ISO has a work programme that extends out to 2019 and 2020. So you will see output from this forum coming forward to you over the next 2 years. And I think the importance of this is that it shows how the global work actually can potentially become local. And in that regard, the NSAI has a national mirror committee. So the purpose of our mirror committee, which is chaired by Ralph Montague, and thank you very much, Ralph, for that, is to look at all of this work that I've described. So to look at the main working group in Europe, the 5 subgroups from that, the work that's happening at international level at ISO, the interactions with all of the other standards bodies and worlds in terms of what's happening, and to take that back and distill it from an Irish perspective. So this is the current representation on the BIM Mirror Committee, and there's room for more people. There's room for people to be involved on an active participant basis, and indeed on an observation basis. So this is where Ireland gets the opportunity to make sense of what's happening and to influence it. And the real challenge for Ireland is, are we standards takers or standards makers? And that decision lies within the hands of lies in this room. Do we just want to take what's happening internationally and go with it? Or do we see potential to make and influence those standards? And if you see potential to make and influence standards, then this is where you need to be. You need to be participating in this group. You need to be engaging with this group. And there are lots of different ways of doing that. But the importance is that you engage with the group. Because the group has quite a number of ongoing challenges. The first of which is, as I said, how we broaden the representation such that every relevant voice is heard and is given an opportunity to contribute. And I appreciate everybody in this room is very busy. This is crucially important. This is setting the language that we will all operate on in the future. Equally, there's the potential to not alone participate nationally, but to take that representation forward and to represent Ireland at European and international level, and indeed to engage with colleagues in those fora, because again, one of the key advantages to this standards participation is that you're meeting with like-minded folk from other countries who are in the same position of drawing positions. Our website will give you lots of details as to how to get involved. And I want to touch finally and very, very briefly on NSAI BIM certification. So we've been investing in this over the past year or so, and we're now at the stage where we're ready to offer a pilot certification on BIM. And we've engaged with a number of clients, but we are seeking a number more. And our certification process will be built on the existing PAS and also the draft ISO standard. So it's a further response to the roadmap, and I suppose ultimately we see that third-party BIM certification will become as important and as commonplace as any of the other core management standards, so that it'll be no longer ISO 9000, 14000, etc. This will be where you in this room will be required to participate. So on a broader basis, to conclude, the NSAI is also involved in supporting the roadmap through activities with the BIM Council, with working with other stakeholders to develop some of the other challenges within the roadmap in terms of training, in terms also of looking at engagement. And ultimately our objective is to eliminate waste, to make sure that your time and your efforts are productive, and that in the work that we do, that we give Ireland a significant economic advantage. And with that I will conclude, but those are our contact details for further information. Thank you.